All set? Ready to get started? Any questions? Okay. I was a little delayed in grading Lab 2 meeting yesterday, but I got it graded this morning. So.
Did you get my email about it last night as well?
Oh, no. I didn't see it. I don't remember seeing an email.
I just sent mine out saying mine's not complete. I got lost in the middle of it. If possible, if we could do it like in class sometime.
I was going to ask if you wanted to go over it in class.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the first thing I was going to ask. I actually already have the assignment here pulled up to see if you wanted to go ahead and run through it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. Let's see. Back over on my command line, I'm going to get out of the project directory I was in, and let me go ahead and make a new project directory. Rails new, and I'll just call it Lab 02. I'll let that get... Oh, I forgot to set my gem set. There we go. All right, I'll go ahead and let that get started. Now, of course, the basic idea with the lab was that we were supposed to create a custom active record model, right? We can run the generator, of course, to do some of the foundation work for us, but then there was a lot of things that the assignment specified that we were supposed to add to it. Overall, the idea was that we were supposed to create this user model that had in it some features that I typically find useful in user models. The ability, for example, to not have the password stored as clear text, but instead as a salted hash, which is kind of a minimum level of security that most applications probably need nowadays. And also the ability to have some custom code numbers associated with the user. The basic reason for those often, in my experience, has to do with email. Right? You figure if somebody signs up on your site, they sign in with their email address, which is how it's so often done nowadays. Your system sends them an email, and in that email there's a link you click, verify this email address, the kind of thing you see whenever you sign up for anything online nowadays. Well, if somebody were to take the link from that email and just pop it into their browser and sit and fiddle with the numbers that are in the link, sit and fiddle with like the user ID number that was probably being sent in, letting us know who to verify, they could potentially go through and verify everybody or verify somebody even if it wasn't their real address and all kinds of things like that. So when we want to put together sort of a verification link like that, not only would we want to include the ID of who it is we're trying to verify, but some secret code number that would not be easy to guess. That way it would make it much more difficult for a user to just sit and play with ID numbers until they hit their account and verify themselves when maybe they shouldn't have, or verify others who shouldn't have. Same thing with cancellation. Right? If somebody wants to cancel their account, we don't want them to be able to do something as easy as just change a user ID number in a URL and go around willy-nilly canceling accounts. So we want to be able to generate an additional code number that, again, not easy to guess, but would be required in order for the cancellation to actually take place. Right? So that's the basic idea. Right? Let me go ahead and jump over to that project directory there. Right? And the assignment specifies that the user model we create needs to have all of these different attributes, all of them strings except for the verified attribute. Right? So I can get most of that work done for me just by running a generator. So I'm going to do Rails G model. So I'm going to generate a new model. I'm going to call it user. There we go. And then I need a username. I need a first underscore name. I need a last underscore name. I need an email. I need verified. And since that's the only one that's not a string, I need to specify that it's a Boolean. I need a password hash. I need a password salt. Confirmation code. And a cancellation code. I think that's basically everything I needed in my model. Man, I'm glad I don't have to make all those things by hand. It's a pain just having to type them out like this. I'll go ahead and hit enter. It should generate the model for me, the model file. It also, of course, creates my migration file for me. So then if I just do rake db migrate, it will catch the database up so we actually have our database table prepared to store users. Okay. All right. Oh, let me go ahead and open this up in TextMan. There we go. All right, so in my new user model file, there it is. Right. The assignment specified we need to do some validations, right? Yeah. Validations to the model so that the username, first name, last name cannot be blank. All right. So to do that, we would call the validates method. We would say for username, first name, and last name, right? We want to check for presence, and the presence has to be true. The assignment also says we have to make sure that the username is unique. Right? So validates username for uniqueness has to be true. Yeah. And what else? A regular expression for the email. So we need to validate the format of the email. So validates email format with, and then I'd need to put my regular expression in right there. Is it okay if I skip actually typing in that nasty regular expression? Yeah. Some decent regular expression needs to go here. That's not supposed to be with. That's supposed to be with. Yeah, something along those lines. Okay. It would be a pretty good idea probably if I jumped over to the console and tested this out, tried creating some users, tried leaving some of these different pieces of data out, make sure that I get the appropriate errors, all of those kinds of things. I feel fairly confident it'll work. I might put in a little bit more before I jump over to the console and give it a shot. Okay. The next part, now that I think I have the validation piece done, is maybe to work on the password section. Okay. Basically, the idea was that a user is supposed to appear to have a password. Right? We should be able to say user1.password equals and be able to kind of assign them a password that way. We should be able to say something like put s user1.password to see what their password is. The trick to the whole thing, though, is that there is actually no password field in our user model. Our passwords are not actually stored as a single string that is the actual password itself. Instead, whenever we put a password into the model, what should actually happen is that password should get encoded, right, and stored as a salt and a hash. Right? There are fields available in the user model for that. Whenever we ask the user object for the password, instead of showing the salt or the hash, what we should do is just always give them back nothing. Basically, not reveal anything directly having to do with the password. So to do both of those things, what I need is some methods. So for setting the password, I'm going to need a method called password equals, the exact same way it works with any Ruby object. If I want to put together a mutator type method, a method that lets me assign a value, right, I need a method called password equals. Right? This is the method that would be called if I had a user object and I said that user object dot password equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that's passed right there, of course, would become the value of the PW variable. All right. Now, to actually do the salting and hashing of that password, I gave you the code over here in the assignment. This was for generating the salt, wasn't it? Yeah. So if I copy that, drop it into that method, and say this is where I'm going to get the value for the salt. Let's just say salt equals. Okay. Then the other bit over here for actually assigning the value for the hash, for figuring out the hash value. Let's see, I could say, which way do I want to do this? Let's come back up here and let's say self.password salt. And then down here, self.password hash equals that bit, which would be the password plus the salt turned into a hex digest, turned into a hash. Yeah, that should do the trick. So that would let us assign a password, I do believe. And at that point, I think I want to go ahead and try it out. Well, actually, let's throw one more thing in here. The actual password method itself, I'm just going to say return nothing. So if I say, for example, put s user1.password, what it would actually at that point give me back is nothing. So if I ask an object, I ask a user what its password is, the answer will always be, I don't know, not going to tell you. Okay. All right, let me jump over to the console. Let's see what happens. All right, that's fine. I don't have HIRB and awesome print installed, but I think we'll live without it here in this case. Right? If I say u equals user.new, it won't let me get away with not putting in the parameters. I have to at least give a username, first name, and last name. Username has to be unique, and the email is going to need to match, well, it would need to match a pattern if I'd actually put a regular expression in there. So let me say for this new user, the username will be test1. Right. The first name can be test. The last name can be 1. And I end up with a new user. Right. Not saved yet, but that's okay. Now if I say u.password equals, and let's say I try to set the password to password, everything looks kind of okay. If I ask you what its password is, it tells me nothing, which is what it should do. If I take a look at the password salt, I can see that that was generated. And if I look at the password hash, I can see that that was generated. So it looks like our password equals method did correctly take a password that I tried to set and turned it into a salt and hash combination. Right. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for the passwords. Right. The other big thing, I guess, that we needed to do then was the codes and some of the extra methods that went along with those. We were supposed to have a method called, what? Where is it? Generate codes, that's right. Generate codes bang, right? Like that. Okay. Whenever we call this method, it's supposed to generate the confirmation code with this little bit. So self.confirmation code equals that little bit of encoding. And self.cancellation To do that, it's this little bit. Generate codes was supposed to be an instance method, because that's something we would call on a new user to generate their individual codes. So let's see, if I'm back over in the console, if I reload, create a new user, or at least enough of one to be able to try it out. Username test1, first name test, last name 1, and let me say their email is test@test.com. Okay. If I look at u.confirmation code, it's blank. If I look at u.cancellation code, it's blank. If I call u.generate codes, then go back and look at the confirmation code, look at the cancellation code, it looks like they both have been set. The object needs to be saved, right? But our method did correctly generate a couple of codes for them. Codes that would not be likely for anybody to guess. Okay. The assignment didn't specifically ask for it, okay, but setting a filter to go along with generate codes would probably be a good idea. Okay. We could do something like, say, before save, generate codes. That way I don't even have to worry about calling generate codes manually. Whenever I save an object, it'll just go ahead and generate the codes for me. Yeah. Okay, what else did we need in here? Oh, the authenticate method. Let's see, let me, can I save this user that I've started? Yep, I got a true back, so it looks like I passed all my validations. The user was actually created. So I have a user stored in my database now. If I say user.all, there they are. Forget how ugly this is when you get used to HIRB. Okay, but they're there. All right, the authenticate method then. Def authenticate. Okay, the authenticate method is something I want to be able to call directly from the user class. Basically, I want to be able to say user.authenticate, and then I should be able to give it a username and a password. And it should come back and let me know, does that user really exist and is that their password? Right? So for my authenticate method, I need it to be a class method, which is why I have the self in front of it. Right? It's going to be passed a username and a password, and that's the information for the user that we're trying to authenticate. Right? First step in the authentication would have to be seeing if we can find a user that has that username. Right? So I could do something like, say, user equals user.find. Or even better, let's say user.where. And we could say username is the username that was passed here to the method. And maybe I'll go ahead and ask for the first value. User at that point should end up either being an actual user with that username or nil, if we couldn't find somebody with that name. Right? Okay. What we could do then is say if user is equal to nil, that means we couldn't find them at all. Okay. Or, okay, and this is the fun part, we want to say or their password doesn't match. The trick to it all is that here we would have their plain text password, basically the password they would have filled into a login form, but we don't actually have the plain text password stored for the users. What we instead have here in the user that we may have retrieved is, of course, the password salt and the password hash. So what we need to do is we need to take the plain text password that was passed. I need to salt and hash it the same way I did before, or hash it the same way I did before with the salt, and see if it matches what I actually have stored. Okay? So let's see, did I give you a little bit of code to do this, or is it just the same code we had before? Same code we had before. So up here, when we generated the hash, that little bit right there, I want to do basically the same thing right down here. Okay? I'm going to take their plain text password, that. I'm going to add to it, append to it, the salt that we have stored. The whole thing ends up getting hashed. Right? And then I want to say, so the whole statement is becoming, if the user is nil, meaning we couldn't find a user with that username at all, or the converted version of the password they submitted is not equal to the user's password hash. So when we've rehashed the password they submitted, if it doesn't match the hash we have stored for their password, that must mean that it started off at a different value. It's not the same password they used when they first signed up. Okay. So if that's the case, then that means that they are a bad user. The username doesn't exist or the password doesn't match. So we can raise an exception. So we'll raise and we'll say username or password is incorrect. Finish that off. If we didn't raise the exception, what I'll do is I'll just return the user. Password. Yeah, let's give it a try. Back over in the console. Let me see. We've got a user. Did I give them a password? No, I didn't. I reloaded. I need to make sure that that user I have in my database actually has a password, so we have something to authenticate against. Let me say u equals user dot first. u.password equals, I'll just set their password to test. If I take a look, they have a salt, they have a hash. Let me go ahead and save them. u.save. So now this user has all of their codes. They have the salt and the hash. So everything looks like it's pretty good then. So then if I say user.authenticate, and I say the username is blah, and the password is blah, it raised the exception. Username or password is incorrect. That's exactly what it should have done. Okay. If I try to authenticate and I give it a correct username test, but a bad password, raises the exception. That's what it should do. If I try to authenticate and I give it a correct username and a correct password, oops, it raised an exception. Isn't that the username and the password I set?
Username is test one.
Ah, so a bad username still. Okay, let's try test one with a bad password. Got a different error in there. Undefined method password salt. From my authenticate method. Password salt. Isn't that the name of it? Where did I go wrong?
Is it only local of that method?
I have self with it. Oh, there is no self. That's the problem. This is a class method. There is no self. That should be user. The password salt for that user. I copied it from up above and I forgot to change that. Right. All right, well, let's try again. User's still sitting out there? Yep. Okay. Go back. User authenticate. Bad name, bad password. We get the correct exception. All right. Good username, bad password. We get the correct exception. Good username, good password. We got the exception again. Huh. Still not coming through right, is it? Test 1 and test. That should be the right username and the right password, I believe.
In the authenticate, should it be user.password plus user.password and salt?
The password here is the local password variable from there.
Okay.
So that should be okay, I think. User.password hash not equal to all of that business. If user equals nil or their password's wrong, do this. Let's try this. Let's say put s found user if user. Let's make sure we're actually retrieving the user like we're supposed to. Oh. Reload. Alright, let's try authenticating. Yep, found user. So we did find the user. Alright, so that's happening. If I try that and I give it a bad username, yeah, it doesn't say found user. Okay, so we're finding the user, which means the user's not nil. So it has to be something that's going wrong over here with the password hash business. Digest, text digest. The password they submitted plus the salt that we have for them. If that's not equal to the hash we have for them. Because when we created the hash up here, we took the password that was submitted. Oh, nope. I made a mistake when I stored the submitted password. Up here I called it PW. Here I tried to call it password. That should be PW. So I was storing the incorrect hash for their password. Alright, let me reload the console. Let me go retrieve that user. Let me reset their password. There we go. U.save. Hopefully that got it. I see a different salt in there than what was there before. The password hash, is it different? Yes, it's different too. Good, I would expect it to be. Okay. One more go around. Bad username, bad password. Get the correct exception. Good username, bad password. Get the exception. Good username, good password. Ah, we got the user. No exception. So that fixed it.
Where did you put PW again?
In the password equals method, right? I had called the variable here PW, but down here when I was hashing their password, I was using the word password, which was basically nil. So I guess I was more or less just making a hash of the salt. There wasn't anything else there. Little things, little things. What do you think? Do you have questions about it so far? We just have a few more methods to go, and I think the rest of them are pretty easy. Okay. One of the other methods that we're supposed to have is a method that we can use to verify a user. With the verify, the way it was supposed to work is that essentially we would have already retrieved the user object based on an ID number, an email address, something like that. And we would then want to say verify them, and we would want to give them the code they submitted. If the code they submitted, which is my local code variable right here, matches the verification code, what did I call that? Confirmation code that's stored in the object, then we want to mark them as being verified. Right? So I could just say if the code they submitted is equal to the confirmation code, then they're basically verified. So if they do match, we could do self.update attributes. We could update their verified. I think that was the name of the field, wasn't it? Verified. And set it to true. Right? No save necessary there. Update attribute saves automatically. Updates in place. Let's also go ahead then and return true. And if they can't be verified because their code's wrong, we'll just return false. Let's see how that one works. So I've got my object U here. Their confirmation code is so long I can't even copy it straight out of there. There's the entire thing. So let me copy that confirmation code. There we go. Oh, I need to reload this, don't I? Let me get U back again. There we go. Alright. So there's their confirmation code. Alright, if I check their verified status, it comes back as nil right now. They're not verified. If I say u.verify and I pass the correct code, actually let's do the incorrect code first. I'll just wipe out part of it. I get back false. And if I check to see if they're verified, the answer is still nil, not verified. If I say verify them, and I pass the correct code, I got back true. And if I check to see if they're verified, the answer is true. So I think that one works. Okay. We were supposed to have one like that for canceling then. This one was supposed to be a class method. So we could basically say user.cancel. And we would give it a username and a code. Isn't that how it works? Unlike this one up here where we would already have a user. Okay, so with the cancel method, we can expect to get a user. Was it a username or a user object? Which one did the assignment say? Do you remember? Object? Okay. Alright, so we'll get a user object and we'll get their code. Getting the user object to make things a little bit easier. Okay. We could just say what? If the user's cancellation code is equal to the code that was submitted, Then we want to cancel them, destroy them. So user.destroy. Return true. Otherwise, return false, just letting them know that's the wrong code. What do you think? Make sense? Let me jump back over to the console. Let's give it a shot. U.cancellation code. Oh, I need to reload. I really got to look up that script that does that for you automatically again. Okay, U is user.first. There we go. U.cancellation code. There it is. I'm going to copy that thing. Alright, if I say user.cancel, I give it my object U, and I put in a bad code. I get back false. They weren't canceled. If I do user.cancel, I give it the object U, and I put in the correct code. I get back true, and it looks like they were deleted. If I do user.all, yep, they are gone. Okay. What do we have left then? One more method, verified. Verify was the one that set them as being verified, but there was supposed to be a verified method that told us all the users who were verified. So let me make a handful of users. Let's do user.create, username, test1, first name, test, last name, 1, email, test1@test.com. Binary data inserted for string type on column cancellation code confirmation code. I didn't see that pop up before. Have you? Binary data inserted. Interesting. U1. Looks like the code's got there. Let me try making another user. User 2. Was that just a warning we got? It didn't look like an exception. It almost looks like it's just a message from the database. I've never run into that before. I'm not actually sure what that is or where exactly it's coming from. I'll have to look that one up. I'll have to do a little Googling. But it seems to be working one way or another. Okay. Let me create one more user. So I'm going to have 3 users. 3, 3, and 3. Oh, one more 3. 3. Okay. User.all, I should have 3 users in there now. User.all.count, yeah, I get back 3. So I've got 3 users. I want to verify 2 of them. Right? U1.confirmation code. This is their confirmation code. Right? Let me do U1.verify. I'll put in that code. So user 1 is now verified. Let me do the same thing for user 3. U3.confirmation code. That's their confirmation code. I'll copy that one. I'll say u3.verify, drop in the proper code, and they should now be verified. If I do user where verified is true, I should get back 2 users, user 1 and user 3. Hard to tell there, isn't it? How about user where verified true count? Yeah, I got back 2 users, so that's correct, right? So the last method I was supposed to add was supposed to be a method that just did that for me, where I could say user.verified, and it would give me back all the users that were verified. So more or less what we'd want to do is just take that where method call that we just wrote and just put it in as essentially a class method. So the last thing I could throw in here in my class then, so that I could do user.verified, right, is I could put in def self.verified, right, and then of course I could say user.where verified is true. Last statement in the method, so its return value is what will be returned. That should be it. Let me reload the console and see if it works. User.verified. That looks right. Verified.count. Yep, there's 2 of them that came back. So I think that's it. That's it. I don't want to take this and put it out with the examples that I post on my website, but if you all want a copy of this, I'll hold on to it. Just send me an email, and I'll send it to you. Well, actually, you know, does it really make that much difference since I'm going to take this and put it on YouTube anyway? Well, I guess that's the end for this assignment. I'm never giving this one again.
So you might want to pull it down at the other semester.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe this assignment's just had its run. This is the end of it. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else I could tell you about Lab 2? Okay. How are we doing on time? Still got a little bit of time left. You ready to jump back into the associations we were working on last time? Okay. Shutting user down. Let's see, let me get out of the console there, out of that directory, back over to our relationships project. There we go. Where we had left off was we had gotten through one-to-one associations, one-to-many associations, and we were starting to play with many-to-many associations. I had told you that there were a couple of different ways that we could put many-to-many associations together. One of them was using this thing called has and belongs to many. So what I had done was I had taken 2 of the classes, 2 of the model types that we had made here, tutorials and courses, right? And I had set them up so that there was a many-to-many relationship between them. A course can have many tutorials, and a tutorial can belong to many courses. Okay? In order for that to happen, we had to create a linking table. And when you set up many-to-many relationships using the has and belongs to many version of it, the linking table itself is not represented by a model. It is nothing but a good old-fashioned pure database table. So what we did was we just wrote a migration to create that table for us, put the proper field names into it, proper attribute names, so it would be there to be used. And you might remember that it's picky about the name of the table. It has to be the name of the 2 models that are being related in alphabetical order. So here I was trying to attach together courses and tutorials, so I had to call the linking table courses underscore tutorials in that order. I couldn't have done tutorials underscore courses. Have to be alphabetical. Okay. Once that was there, the only other thing we had to do to make it work was to actually call the has and belongs to many method. So in the tutorial class, we said that every tutorial has and belongs to many courses. Over in the courses class, we said that every course has and belongs to many tutorials. Okay? And we fiddled with it just a little bit as we were running out of time last time. And let's see what we have. Course.all, we've got one course in there, the Rails course. I'm going to pull that out so we can use it easy. I'm going to put it into a variable called Rails_C for Rails course. So let me say course.first. There we go. In the tutorial table, we have two tutorials in there, Baking a Cake and Learning Rails. In this case, for the Rails tutorial, for convenience sake, I'm going to grab it, reference it with a variable called Rails_T. I'll say tutorial.last to grab that one. And I believe we've already associated those two with one another, if I remember correctly. If I go to the Rails course and ask it about its tutorials, plural, sure enough, it comes back and says, we have a Learning Rails tutorial that's part of the Rails course. If I go to the Rails tutorial and I ask it about its courses, it says that it is used by the Rails course. Okay. So we have at least, obviously, a one-to-one relationship there. Okay. What we need are more courses, more tutorials, so we can see if we can actually get the many-to-many stuff going. So let's make another course. Let's do HTML. What were the attributes of my courses? Do you remember?
Title, discipline, number, and credits.
Okay, title we'll say is HTML. Discipline. Discipline we'll say is CSYS. Number is, what is the course number for HTML? 1013? I can't remember. Something like that. For credits, we'll say 3. There we go. So now I've got an HTML course. If I ask the HTML course about its tutorials, I get back an empty array. There are currently no tutorials assigned to the HTML course. Okay. Right. Let's make a new tutorial. Let's call it the zipping tutorial. Tutorial.create. Tutorials had a title. Is that right? How to zip a file. Yeah, there we go. Created a zipping tutorial. Alright, now that how to make a zip file is something that the people in the Rails class and the people in the HTML class could use. It's applicable to both. So if I say for the Rails course, into its tutorials push the zipping tutorial, it does it. Okay. If I say for the HTML courses tutorials, push in the zipping tutorial, it does that too. All it's doing is adding the ID pairs to the linking table to form the relationship between the course and the tutorial. At that point, if I go to the Rails course and I ask it about its tutorials, it says the Rails course has tutorials learning Rails and how to zip a file. If I go to the HTML course, ask about its tutorials, it's of course just how to zip a file. If I go to the zipping tutorial and I ask it what courses it's used in. It tells me Rails and HTML. So we've got some many-to-many. The Rails course has 2 tutorials. One of the tutorials has 2 courses. There does seem to be some many-to-many action going on there. I can do this all day. What do you think? Not too bad? In the Rails course, in their tutorials, which one's the first? Learning Rails. Okay. In the first tutorial for the Rails course, what's the first step? .steps.first. Learning Ruby. For the Rails courses tutorials, the first one, in its steps, the first one, what's that particular step's title? Learn Ruby. What do you think of that? Rails c.tutorials.first.steps.first.title. Never having to mention an ID, but jumping through multiple associations. Starting off with a course, going through a linking table, over to the tutorials table. From the tutorials table, finding the associated steps over in the steps table, and being able to look up a particular step and an attribute of it without ever having to mention an ID or write a lick of SQL. It just finds its way through all of it automatically. Pretty neat. Plus all the Ruby goodness that's in here too. Right? There I just grabbed a string, returned a string. What if, for example, I wanted an array of the names of all the courses that use the zipping tutorial? Do you remember the MapIterator in Ruby? I don't know if you've played with it any since we talked about it last semester. Okay. Basically, the MapIterator takes some generated data and plugs it into an array, gives us the array back when it's done. Okay. So what if I went to my zipping tutorial, I said go through all of the courses that use this tutorial, map each of those courses, okay, where we're going to take the course and pull out its title. Right? So the return value from the block, the title of each course as we go through them, as we iterate through them, will all be plugged into an array, and we'll end up getting back from that little statement an array that has the titles of all the courses that use the zipping tutorial. Yeah. Anything else you want to try? Do you have any questions? Okay. All right. Has and belongs to many. The particular way that we set up that association had one in particular downside to it, and that was that the linking table itself is not actually represented by a model. So really, once we set up that linking table, from that point on, we really never touch it again. Never touch it again directly. Right? In some types of relationships, like what we have here between courses and tutorials, there's not that much to say about the relationship. Right? A course uses a tutorial is used by a course. What else am I supposed to say? Right? But there are lots of situations where you have a many-to-many relationship where the actual act of linking the two things together often comes along with some of its very own data. Right? Like, let's say, as a matter of fact, let's not even say let's add a semester model to our project here. Right? I'm going to say Rails G model semester. We already have courses and tutorials and all that fun stuff. Got to have semesters, right? Let's say every semester has a season, which is a string, and a year, which is a string. There we go. I need to migrate my database. So now we've got a semester. Right? Now, there's an association between semesters and courses, right? Sure, we're sitting in one right now. There has to be. Okay? Otherwise, where are we? I have no idea. Okay? What is the association between the two? A course is taught in how many different semesters? Hopefully many. Right? How many courses can be taught in a single semester? Hopefully many, right? So there's certainly a many-to-many relationship there. Right? Is there a name for the association between the two? Right? What do we call the intersection of a semester and a particular course being taught? What is this? It's a class, right? In a way. I've spent a lot of time, probably way too much time, thinking about the terminology that goes along with this. We could call it a class. We could say a class is an instance of a course that happens during a particular semester. If we call what we're doing here for the whole 16 weeks our class, right, then it could be a class. Of course, the term class is loaded. Right? Trying to create a model called class would mean we'd have to create a class, which wouldn't be a lot of fun, so that would not be a great term to call it anyway. Plus, there's also the potential problem that I think of a class not as being what we're doing here the entire 16 weeks, but what we do at a specific day at a specific time. Like what happened on today, February 14th at 11 o'clock. That, to me, is a class. But the entire thing, the whole 16 weeks of us here together learning a subject of a particular course during a particular semester, TCC refers to that as a section. Right? You've probably heard them talk about section numbers, section IDs, all that sort of stuff. That's TCC's term for it. So if we're talking about there being a many-to-many relationship between a semester and a course, the linking table that we would create in order to be able to associate a course and a semester, it would be reasonable if we called that linking table section, because a section is the meeting point between a semester and a course. Now, do sections have additional information that go along with them? Or do they rely entirely on the information that comes from the semester during which they occur and the course of what they are? Well, the way, again, it usually happens is the section itself has information. This class has its course information, like our course number, CSYS2863, but we also have a section number, which I don't remember off the top of my head. Some 5-digit number is the way TCC usually does it. Right? They call it a CRN, a course reference number. Basically a section number. Okay? So in that particular case, setting up a has and belongs to many relationship between semester and course would not be what we would want to do, because there's additional information about the relationship itself, like what days does the section meet, what's the section number, what times does it meet, in what room, on what campus. All of that is information about the section, not the course or the semester. You with me on that? Okay. So we don't want to use has and belongs to many. So what we would want to do is we'd want to use the other way, the certainly more popular, more common way that Rails typically does many-to-many associations. And that's essentially by doing has many through. Right? Has many is a method we've actually already used a couple of times. When we set up the one-to-many relationship, we used the has many method. It was over in, what was it, Steps and Tutorials? A tutorial, oh, should have it right here. There it is. A tutorial has many steps. Right? We would want to use that same method in setting up this has many through, this many-to-many relationship between courses and semesters. But what we would do is when we call that method, we would include another option called through, which basically means that semester would have a connection not only to a section, but semester would also have a connection through the section to the course. And same thing coming from the other direction. The course would be connected to a section, but also through the section, the course would connect to the semester. That's why they call it a has-many through. Essentially what we do is we set up two has-many relationships. So we would say a semester has many sections and a course has many sections. A section belongs to a semester and a section belongs to a course. So just like we had done with tutorials and steps, but we would do two of them, right, with the linking table. But then when we also put in the through option, it gives us additional capabilities to where we can, if we need to, ignore the linking table, pass right through it, and get to the information that's on the other side. So essentially we could go straight from semester to course, or straight from course to semester, passing silently through the section linking table when we don't actually need it, to be able to get to the other side and retrieve information that's necessary. Okay? So I've already got my course model. I created my semester model here just a second ago. What we need to do is we also need to make a section model. So let me do Rails G model section. Let's say every section has a CRN, course reference number. Let's also say every section meets at a particular time. And I'm just going to put that in as a string right now. Date time would probably be better in the long run. But for our fiddling here, it'll be easier if it's just a string. We could put in room numbers and campuses and all that stuff too. I just don't think it would probably offer much of anything else. Would it? Actually, maybe we should. Nah, I think meets at will be good enough. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and generate that model. RakeDB migrate to migrate the database. Oh, I forgot to put in the linking fields, the fields I need for linking the semester and the course table. Let's do Rails destroy model section. Let me just wipe out what I just did. Oops, I should have rolled back my database too. I've completely messed everything up now. Let's see where we are. RakeDB migrate, status. See that last migration down there, no file? It's because I just deleted it. I should have rolled back first. Let's do RakeDB rollback now. Was it able to do it? No, because I deleted the stupid file. That's the problem. So now I could manually go back and twiddle with things to kind of get it back. But maybe actually what would be easier is let me just recreate it all again. Right? So let me go back and regenerate that section model I just deleted unadvisedly. That puts the migration file back. Then let's see, can I roll back now? No, I just have another migration. Oh, gee whiz. I've completely messed that up. Let's see. How do we get that back? Let's just destroy our database and rebuild it. It's probably what we're going to need to do. We're going to lose all of our test data. Right? But that might be the cleanest thing to do at the moment. Let me go ahead and destroy my section model again, because I am going to need to recreate that. And then what? What is it? RakeDB drop. Drops the database. Seems like there was another one.
Structure dump?
Structure dump? Schema dump? I didn't see a structure.
It's the fourth from the bottom.
Oh, dump the database structure. Yeah, that's just going to write it out. I don't want to save it. That would just save it to a file. I think I just want to do db drop. rake db drop. Oops, I accidentally got a capital B there. And I lost the colon. Maybe it's time to stop. No such file. Yeah, okay, I didn't have a test database. That's all right. Let me do drop all. Let's see, if I go out and look in the project, I do a listing of my DB directory. Yeah, no databases there. No SQLite files, so I think that did it. Rake db migrate status. No tables. Right? Nothing there. Let's do rake db migrate. Reapplied all my migrations. And if I look at the status now, everything's caught up and back where it's supposed to be. Lost my test data, but not the worst thing in the world. Okay? Alright, let me try making that model again, that section model again. Rails generate model section. Every section was going to have a course reference number, CRN. Every section was going to have a meets at, date and time, string for the moment. The thing I forgot was that I need foreign key fields. Right? It's a linking table, so it needs to have the foreign key fields for relating the semester and the course. So I'm going to say we're going to need a course that it references and a semester that it references. Or I could have just created course underscore ID as an integer field and semester underscore ID as an integer field. And it would have worked out to the same thing. Right? By specifying here, though, that these are foreign key fields, that they're going to be used to reference other models. If I go ahead and migrate my database, if I come back over and I take a look at my new section model, it already has filled in for me, right, that a section belongs to a course and a section belongs to a semester. That was the benefit of doing that references thing, is it typed those two lines for me. Cool, thanks. Okay. All right, to finish off this, what I would need to do is I'd need to go over to semester, and I would need to say a semester has many sections. Right? That's the one-to-many relationship between section and semester. But I would also then say a semester has many courses through sections. So I'm saying for a semester, not only do you have sections, but you also have many courses. You get to them by going through the sections table. It's really what it boils down to. In a way, kind of two one-to-many relationships for the price of one. So let's see, over in my course table then, I'd want to do the same basic thing. I would want to say a course has many sections. Many sections of a course can be taught. But I'm also going to say that a course has many semesters. And to get to them, you go through the sections. Right. We're almost out of time, so we'll probably have to do like we did last time, where we'll start next class by playing with this a bit. But just real quick, if I pull up the console, if I, let's say, make a semester real fast, let me say fall equals semester dot create. Fall 2013. What's that? Stringify keys. Undefined method stringify keys for fall. Oh, what am I doing? Season. Year. I didn't tell it what those were. I wasn't putting them in as a hash as I was supposed to. There we go. That created the fall 2013 semester. Now, if I go to the fall semester and I ask about its sections, it understands what I'm talking about. It says the fall semester has no sections. If I go to the fall semester and I ask about what courses are being taught, it again understands the request and says there are no courses being taught. Right? But what's important there is that it understood what I was talking about, and to be able to figure out that there were no courses being taught in the fall, what it actually had to do was it had to make a jump through the sections table. If you look at the SQL that was written, you see it going to the sections table, looking for a course ID for this particular semester. Okay. If we create a course, Rails is a new course. Let's create it. So courses had titles, Rails, they had discipline, CSYS, courses have numbers, 2863, and they have credits, 3. So there I recreated our Rails course that I wiped out when I messed up the database. If I go to the Rails course and I ask what sections of Rails course has been taught, it understands the request and says currently there are none. If I go to the Rails course and I say during which semesters has Rails been taught, it says there are none. Right? But what again is important is that it obviously understood the request. When I asked about semesters from the course object, it understood that in order to be able to figure out that relationship, it had to actually go through the sections table. You can see in the SQL there where it did that. Okay. So what we'll do on Tuesday, next class, is we'll pick up with this. We'll play with our has many through relationships. What you're essentially going to find is that it works exactly the same as the one-to-many relationships do. So if you go back and see all the collection association things we've done before, the things we were able to do when we were playing with has and belongs to many, the things we were able to do when we were playing with the one-to-many relationship, the has-many relationship, all of them are going to work exactly the same way here through the has-many-through type relationship. So we'll be able to assign all these different guys to each other, and the relationships between them, the associations between them will be recognized, and everything will just basically work real nice, real pretty. Sound okay? Yeah. So we'll play with that a little bit at the beginning of class on Tuesday, and then we'll talk about custom associations, kind of bending the rules in a way, stepping a little bit off the path of the straight and narrow. All right. I hope you all have a good weekend then. I'll see you next week.